Hey guys, tonight we're going to dim the lights and drift back in time. Not to the comforting narratives of modern self made entrepreneurs in, say, Silicon Valley, who built empires from garage startups, or the inspiring tales of political figures from humble beginnings in, say, rural Iowa, who rose through democratic means to lead. Instead, we're plunging into the often brutal and profoundly unsettling world of terrible jobs that don't exist anymore and more. Contemplating the sheer force of will, the unimaginable hardship, and the chilling ruthlessness that forged some of history's most dominant figures. You might picture grand battles and strategic brilliance, but trust me, tonight you'll discover a reality far more visceral, often more agonizing, and sometimes, frankly, downright barbaric. You'd probably find yourself longing for the structured fairness of a contemporary meritocracy, however imperfect. Within minutes of imagining yourself standing as a child in a desolate ancient village, or witnessing the raw struggle for survival that defined their formative years. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine yourself now, an ordinary person living in prehistoric times, perhaps akin to a diligent anthropology student from a small, quiet university town in, say, Amherst, Massachusetts, trying to make sense of deeply unsettling historical records. You stumble upon an ancient account, perhaps etched onto a worn rock, detailing the daily life of a hunter-gatherer that chills you to the bone. This isn't the familiar, if often debated, concept of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, as understood in modern American folklore. With its emphasis on individual effort and opportunity, this is raw, visceral, and deeply unsettling. A profound assault on your modern sensibilities of safety and personal comfort. Consider yourself a nervous observer, watching early humans trying to survive a harsh winter, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine the constant threat of starvation and exposure, knowing that even a common cold could be a death sentence, your body bracing for the inevitable. Peculiar discomfort and profound despair of a daily existence defined by brutal, unyielding nature. Or perhaps a concerned public health official, visiting a museum exhibit on ancient human settlements in, say, Washington, D.C., recognizing the detached efficiency with which human life was extinguished by disease and environmental hazards, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under these primitive conditions, far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of job insecurity with modern social safety nets and career counseling in a brightly lit modern suburban home in, say, suburban San Francisco, California. The hushed whispers of ancient hunters, once a gentle murmur of survival, now mingle with the chilling sounds of distant predator calls. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal violations, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate survival often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on physical suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling reality of the dawn of discomfort. Early human labor, where the very essence of ancient existence was not about profound emotional fulfillment or societal contribution, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming a daily routine into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting survival often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar struggle a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound societal peril. When you think of a job, you probably picture a modern office, a bustling factory, or perhaps a skilled trade. But before LinkedIn, before unions, before even the concept of a regular paycheck, there were jobs so fundamentally brutal, so terrifyingly insecure, that they make your worst Monday morning commute look like a spa day. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of terrible jobs that don't exist anymore and more. Focusing first on the pervasive dread of the dawn of discomfort early human labor. A common historical truth is that the earliest forms of human labor, predating organized societies and advanced tools, were inherently brutal, precarious, and all-consuming, directly tied to immediate survival. Jobs like hunting large game mammoths, saber-toothed cats, foraging for sustenance in unpredictable environments, defending against predators and rival groups, and constructing rudimentary shelters from raw materials were physically exhausting, constantly dangerous, and offered no respite, requiring extreme physical endurance, acute sensory awareness, and constant vigilance. Reflecting a grim reality where daily existence was a relentless struggle against nature's indifference and the ever-present threat of starvation, injury, or death, historians still widely debate the precise division of labor between genders in early hunter-gatherer societies, and whether the physical demands placed on individuals allowed for any form of specialized roles beyond immediate survival needs. Imagine yourself, then, an early human, perhaps part of a small nomadic tribe in what would one day become the vast, wild plains of, say, Montana, thousands of years before the first city ever rose. Your job isn't chosen. It's thrust upon you by the sheer necessity of survival. If you're a hunter, your days are spent tracking dangerous prey across unforgiving terrain, often for days on end, without guarantee of success. You're not just facing a deer, you're facing a woolly mammoth, a cave bear, or a saber-toothed cat. Your tools are rudimentary: a sharpened stick, a crude spear, a few rocks. There's no protective gear, no medical emergency response team waiting if you're gored or clawed. A single misstep, a moment of hesitation, and your life is over, likely in a horrifyingly painful way. Your family's survival depends entirely on your success, and a failed hunt means starvation for the entire group. It truly sucked to be a mammoth hunter. This isn't just about the physical danger, it's about the constant, gnawing fear. You are perpetually on guard, scanning the horizon for predators, listening for the snap of a twig that could signal a rival tribe, always aware of the subtle shifts in weather that could mean sudden fatal exposure. Sleep is rarely truly restful. You wake up cold, hungry, and immediately face the same brutal struggle for existence. This wasn't the contained hardship of a modern-day wilderness survival course in, say, the Appalachian Mountains, with a trained guide and emergency satellite phone. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter inescapable vulnerability. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about the dawn of discomfort. Early human labor is the curious phenomenon of prehistoric lichen pickers risking death for vibrant colors, where in various parts of the ancient world, including potentially early settlements in what might become the American Southwest. Some early humans undertook incredibly dangerous jobs to gather specific lichens and minerals from precarious cliff faces or deep cave systems. These seemingly insignificant tasks were vital for producing pigments for cave paintings, body art, or early textile dyes, and often involved climbing without ropes or navigating treacherous, unstable ground, subtly highlighting that even in the primal quest for survival, there was a deeply ingrained, desperate drive for aesthetic expression and cultural meaning, often at extreme personal risk. Imagine yourself clinging to a slippery rock face, dozens of feet above the ground, just to scrape off some green lichen. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to be a prehistoric pigment collector. Consider also the job of a forager in these early societies. While perhaps less overtly dangerous than hunting large game, it was no less grueling or precarious. Your days would be spent meticulously searching for edible plants, roots, berries, and insects, often walking for miles, constantly discerning between nutritious and poisonous species. You're competing with animals for the same resources, and a single mistake in identification could lead to excruciating illness or death. You carry your infants and your meager possessions, your body constantly aching from the relentless movement and the unpredictable bounty of nature. There's no guarantee of finding enough food for the day, let alone enough to store for leaner times. Every morning is a gamble. This profound uncertainty about basic sustenance was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of grocery store shortages with modern supply chains and food security programs in a brightly lit modern supermarket in, say, suburban Houston, Texas. Historians still widely debate the precise nutritional completeness of various hunter-gatherer diets across different prehistoric environments, and whether their seemingly precarious food sources consistently met the caloric and micronutrient needs for optimal human health and sustained population growth. Even the job of shelter building was a brutal endeavor. Imagine gathering heavy logs, stones, and animal hides with no saws, no cranes, no power tools. You're relying purely on brute force, ingenuity, and the collective effort of your small group. Every structure you build is a race against the elements, a desperate attempt to create a temporary haven against blizzards, torrential rains, or scorching sun. These shelters are crude, fragile, and require constant maintenance. You never truly feel at home in the modern sense. You are always acutely aware of the vulnerability of your dwelling and the immense effort required to maintain even this basic level of protection. It truly sucked to build a prehistoric hut. The concept of a workday simply didn't exist. Life was work. Every waking moment, and often even during sleep, was consumed by the immediate need for food, water, shelter, and safety. There was no separation between labor and life. They were one and the same, a relentless, all-encompassing struggle. There was no concept of retirement, no pension, no social security net. If you became too old or too weak to contribute, your chances of survival plummeted dramatically. This wasn't the structured grind of a modern 9-to-5 job in, say, an office park in Reston, Virginia, followed by leisure time and a comfortable home. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing, a profound engagement with utter, inescapable biological determinism. The jobs of early humans were not about career progression or personal fulfillment. They were about the raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempt to simply exist for another day. The physical exertion, the constant danger, the gnawing hunger, the pervasive fear, all were terrifying harbingers of dubious future, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their early lives were not just childhoods. They were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance, a constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every step, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, societal menace. These were the foundational jobs of humanity, etched into our very DNA. Defining what it meant to survive before civilization offered even the most rudimentary comforts. They remind us of how incredibly far we've come, and how utterly terrifying daily life must have been for our distant ancestors, where every sunrise brought not opportunity, but another relentless, brutal, physically demanding fight for survival against a world that was utterly indifferent to their plight. Let's gently return from the grim reality of the dawn of discomfort. Early human labor, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of mammoth hunting and constant starvation. If Chapter 1 set the unsettling stage for the primal struggle for survival, tonight we'll plunge deeper into the very core of ancient agony, unseen horrors, ancient medical practices. We're going to explore the stark, often dehumanizing, reality of how even the most basic attempts at healing in the ancient world were fraught with terrifying ignorance, excruciating pain, and a chilling reliance on bizarre and often fatal cures, transforming every wound into a gamble for survival and every sickness into a potential death sentence, and revealing a chilling truth that, in these ancient times, the pursuit of basic health often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar treatment a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself now, a patient in ancient times, perhaps akin to a diligent medical student from a prestigious university in, say, Johns Hopkins, Maryland, accustomed to sterile environments, evidence-based medicine, and ethical patient care. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives of grim thought after Chapter 1, and now you face the pervasive presence of a healing system entirely divorced from modern understanding, where individual comfort is sacrificed for ritualistic belief or superstitious practice. There are no pain relievers, no antibiotics, no concept of germ theory, no appeals processes for medical malpractice, as found in a modern democratic healthcare system like, say, the contemporary U.S. hospital in Cleveland, Ohio. Instead, you witness or are subjected to horrifying procedures, from tree panning to bloodletting, performed with crude instruments and often by individuals with no formal training, all designed to cure ailments that modern medicine would swiftly address. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern medical education. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing, a profound assault on your understanding of human dignity and bodily autonomy. Consider yourself a nervous patient, watching a traditional healer prepare a concoction of ground animal parts and questionable herbs, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine the utter pain and stoicism required during a ritualistic procedure, knowing that even a flinch could bring shame or worse, your body bracing for the inevitable. Peculiar violence and profound despair of a medical treatment defined by brutal superstition and profound despair, or perhaps a concerned epidemiologist studying historical accounts of ancient plagues in, say, London, England, recognizing the detached efficiency with which human populations were decimated by preventable diseases, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient medical ignorance. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of health crises with modern vaccines and public health campaigns in a brightly lit modern clinic in, say, suburban Phoenix, Arizona, the hushed whispers of incantations, once a gentle murmur of comfort, now mingle with the chilling sounds of clattering bone saws and desperate grunts. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of infection and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable and horrifying physical pain, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate health often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on physical suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling reality of unseen horrors, ancient medical practices where the very essence of ancient healing was not about profound emotional fulfillment or individual flourishing, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming an ailment into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting relief often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar treatment a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of a doctor, you might picture a kindly face, a clean clinic, and advanced technology. But in the ancient world, medicine was a terrifying gamble, often more horrifying than the disease itself. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of terrible jobs that don't exist anymore and more, focusing on the chilling reality of unseen horrors, ancient medical practices, A common historical truth is that ancient medical practices across various civilizations from Egypt and Mesopotamia to Greece and Rome were largely ineffective by modern standards, often based on rudimentary anatomical knowledge, superstitious beliefs, or humoral theories, and frequently involved invasive, painful, and unhygienic procedures. Common treatments included bloodletting, trepanning drilling holes in the skull, the application of bizarre concoctions made from animal parts or toxic minerals, and the reliance on rituals or prayers, often leading to worsened conditions, severe infections, or death, reflecting a brutal reality where genuine healing was rare and suffering was an expected outcome. Demonstrating the profound limitations of pre-scientific understanding of the human body and disease, historians still widely debate the true extent to which ancient medical practitioners genuinely believed in the efficacy of their more bizarre treatments, and whether some of these methods might have had unintended placebo effects or minor benefits under a specific, poorly understood circumstances. Imagine yourself then a patient in ancient Egypt, perhaps in a bustling city along the Nile, akin to a diligent intern from a modern hospital in, say, New Orleans, Louisiana, where advanced medical imaging and surgical techniques are commonplace. You suffer from a severe headache, perhaps a migraine. Your doctor, a priest-physician, decides that evil spirits are trapped in your head. His solution: trepanning. This isn't a complex neurosurgery performed with precision instruments. This is a crude procedure where a hole is drilled or scraped into your skull using basic tools, often without any effective anesthesia beyond perhaps a strong drink or a blow to the head to knock you out. The goal is to release the evil spirits. The chances of infection are incredibly high, and if you survive the immediate trauma, you could face brain damage or a slow, agonizing death from post-operative complications. And remember, they had no concept of sterile fields or antiseptics. It truly sucked to get a headache in ancient Egypt. This brutal procedure was shockingly common in various ancient cultures, from the Incas to some European Neolithic societies. While some patients apparently survived judging by healed bone around the holes, the suffering must have been immense, and the success rate dubious at best. This wasn't the targeted intervention of a modern medical procedure, aiming to relieve pressure or remove a tumor, with specialized equipment and a team of highly trained professionals. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing, a profound engagement with utter, inescapable, and often unnecessary, physical violation, a fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about unseen horrors. Ancient medical practices is the curious phenomenon of ancient Roman gladiators' personalized pharmacopoeia of dirt and dung, where, contrary to popular belief that gladiators were simply left to die after injuries, some ancient texts, particularly those describing the physician Galen's work with gladiators in Pergamum, suggest that these fighters received surprisingly dedicated, albeit incredibly primitive, medical care. This often involved applying poultices made from specific types of earth, animal dung thought to have antiseptic properties, cobwebs, and herbal mixtures directly to their wounds, subtly creating a bizarre, desperate battlefield medicine that, while horrifying to modern sensibilities, might have offered a minuscule chance of preventing infection or stemming bleeding, highlighting a pervasive blend of ancient empiricism and the deeply disturbing willingness to exploit any available material for perceived medical benefit. Imagine yourself wincing as a doctor packs your gaping wound with a handful of dirt and dung, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden efforts they made to survive daily. It truly sucked to be treated with dung. Consider also the widespread practice of bloodletting. From ancient Greece and Rome through the Middle Ages and even into the 19th century, remember George Washington's fatal bloodletting. This was one of the most common cures for almost any ailment. The belief was that illness was caused by an imbalance of the body's humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile, and removing blood would restore balance. You would be cut open with a lancet or have leeches applied, often until you were alarmingly weak. If you had a fever, they would bleed you. If you were weak, they would bleed you. If you were dying, they would bleed you. The result was often severe weakness, anemia, and a greater susceptibility to infection rather than recovery. This profound ignorance of basic physiology was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of medical side effects with modern pharmaceutical testing and regulatory oversight in a brightly lit modern laboratory in, say, suburban San Diego, California. Historians still widely debate the precise origins and intellectual justifications for the pervasive belief in humoral theory across different ancient civilizations, and whether the continued adherence to bloodletting, despite its evident lack of efficacy, stemmed from a lack of alternative explanations or a strong cultural entrenchment of established medical practices. Then there were the bizarre concoctions and remedies. Ancient medical texts are filled with recipes that would make your stomach churn. Egyptians used crocodile dung as a contraceptive, and honey a natural antiseptic. To be fair, mixed with various unspeakable things for wound care. Roman physicians might prescribe ground-up gladiatorial blood for epilepsy, or pulverized mouse brains for a sore throat. The sheer range of disgusting, ineffective, and often toxic ingredients used in ancient remedies is astounding. Imagine being forced to ingest a mixture of snakeskin, dried animal organs, and human urine, all in the desperate hope of feeling better. It truly sucked to take ancient medicine. Hygiene was virtually non-existent. Surgical instruments were rarely sterilized, if at all. Doctors would often perform procedures without washing their hands between patients, passing infections from one person to the next with terrifying efficiency. A simple cut could become a life-threatening infection. A broken bone could lead to gangrene and amputation, often without effective pain relief. The operating theater, if you could even call it that, would be a grim, often public, spectacle of agony. This wasn't the sterile precision of a modern surgical suite in, say, a top-tier hospital in Rochester, Minnesota. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter inescapable filth and pain, the jobs of ancient healers, and the experiences of their patients. Remind us of a time when the very act of seeking help for illness was a terrifying gamble. The primitive understanding of the body, the reliance on superstition, the lack of hygiene, and the horrifying treatments all were terrifying harbingers of dubious recovery. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their attempts at medicine were not just professional practices. They were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every ailing breath, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt medical menace. These were the doctors and patients of the ancient world. Their lives defined by a grim battle against disease with few effective weapons. They make us appreciate the marvels of modern medicine, from a simple antibiotic to a complex surgical procedure, and the profound comfort of knowing that when you feel unwell, you are far more likely to find genuine relief than horrifying suffering. Let's gently return from the grim reality of unseen horrors. Ancient medical practices, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of trepanning and dung poultices. If Chapter 2 exposed the terrifying lack of medical understanding, tonight we'll plunge into the truly disgusting and often perilous roles that kept ancient cities functioning, or at least trying to function. We're going to explore the stark, often dehumanizing, reality of how these societies manage their waste, their dead, and their rampant diseases, contemplating how individuals, from the humble gong farmer to the terrified plague doctor, face the chilling prospect of constant exposure to filth, infection, and the utter disregard for personal safety, transforming every street into a potential cesspit and every body into a source of contagion, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of communal living often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar task a testament to their desperate desire for communal survival and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself now, an ordinary resident of a bustling ancient city, perhaps akin to a diligent urban sanitation engineer from a modern metropolis in, say, Los Angeles, California, accustomed to advanced waste management systems, public health regulations, and personal protective equipment. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives of grim thought after Chapter 1, and the terrifying medical practices from Chapter 2. And now you face the pervasive, inescapable stench and visible filth of daily urban existence. There are no municipal waste collection services, no sewage treatment plants, no biohazard protocols, and certainly no concept of public health inspectors ensuring environmental cleanliness. As found in a modern democratic urban setting, like, say, contemporary New York City, instead, you witness or are constantly exposed to open sewers, overflowing cesspits, uncollected refuse, and the pervasive presence of disease vectors, all managed, if at all, by individuals performing jobs so utterly vile that they make modern trash collection seem like a clean room operation. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern urban infrastructure. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing, a profound assault on your understanding of basic hygiene and environmental safety. Consider yourself a nervous pedestrian, trying to navigate a narrow Roman alleyway, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you step around piles of refuse and human waste, knowing that every breath carries potential illness. Your body bracing for the inevitable, peculiar discomfort and profound despair of a daily existence defined by pervasive filth and profound despair, or perhaps a concerned public health historian, studying ancient urban planning documents in, say, a quiet academic library in Oxford, England, recognizing the detached efficiency with which human populations were allowed to live in unsanitary conditions, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient urban squalor. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of air pollution, with modern environmental regulations and public health advisories in a brightly lit modern apartment in, say, suburban Seattle, Washington, the hushed whispers of disease, once a gentle murmur of warning, now mingle with the chilling sounds of dripping waste and desperate coughs. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of decay and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying infection, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate urban growth often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on pervasive filth and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling reality of filth and fury, urban life's unsavory roles, where the very essence of ancient city dwelling was not about profound emotional fulfillment or communal prosperity, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness. Transforming a daily commute into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal health, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting communal living often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar task a testament to their desperate desire for communal survival, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of urban life today, you might picture bustling streets, vibrant cultural scenes, and perhaps the occasional grumble about trash pickup. But in the ancient and medieval cities, the reality was a far more pungent, disease-ridden, and utterly disgusting affair. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of terrible jobs that don't exist anymore and more, focusing on the pervasive dread of filth and fury urban life's unsavory roles. A common historical truth is that pre-modern cities, lacking sophisticated sanitation systems, relied on manual, often dangerous, and universally despised labor to manage their pervasive waste, dead bodies, and the consequences of widespread disease. Jobs like gong farmers clearing cesspits, knackers disposing of animal carcasses, and later by plague doctors attending to the sick and dying during epidemics, were characterized by constant exposure to human and animal waste, putrefying flesh, and highly contagious pathogens, offering low social status, meager pay, and an extremely high risk of illness or death. Reflecting a brutal reality where the very act of maintaining basic urban function required individuals to brave conditions that would be unthinkable by modern health and safety standards. Historians still widely debate the precise social mobility or lack thereof for individuals engaged in these unclean professions across different ancient and medieval societies, and whether their essential, albeit repulsive, work sometimes afforded them unique community roles or marginalized them further. Imagine yourself, then a gong farmer in medieval London, perhaps akin to a diligent modern sanitation worker from a clean, efficient wastewater treatment plant in, say, Portland, Oregon, accustomed to automated processes and strict biohazard protocols. Your job is to clean out cesspits, the overflowing, reeking holes beneath homes that collected human waste. This wasn't a quick job with a suction truck. You would descend into these dark, noxious pits, often at night to avoid public outrage and the unbearable stench during the day, using buckets and shovels to manually scoop out years of accumulated human excrement. The smell alone would be enough to make you retch. But the dangers were far greater toxic gases methane. Hydrogen sulfide could cause instant unconsciousness or death. Accidental drowning in the filth was a real risk, and the constant exposure to raw sewage meant you were swimming in disease. You were covered head to toe in waste, your clothes permeated by the stench, ostracized by society, and almost certainly plagued by chronic illness. It truly sucked to be a gong farmer. This profoundly disgusting work was absolutely essential for any city. Without it, disease would spread even faster, and the streets would become utterly impassable. This wasn't the contained risk of modern hazardous waste disposal, with specialized training and cutting-edge protective gear in, say, a secure facility in rural Idaho. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable filth and indignity, a fascinating yet rarely discussed detail about filth and fury. Urban life's unsavory roles as the curious phenomenon of ancient Roman fullers bathing in fermented urine, where, in Roman cities, the fuller or fullo had the essential but incredibly repulsive job of cleaning and bleaching wool and cloth. Their primary cleaning agent was not soap, but fermented human urine, which contains ammonia and was highly effective at dissolving grease and brightening fabrics. These fullers would stomp on the cloth in vats of urine, absorbing the stench and often suffering from skin ailments due to constant contact. Subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of ancient ingenuity using available chemical properties and the deeply disturbing willingness to embrace foul-smelling processes for practical purposes. Imagine yourself standing in a vat of stale, reeking urine, stomping cloves all day. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to be a Roman fuller. Consider also the job of a knacker or flayer. In ancient and medieval cities, these were the individuals responsible for disposing of dead animal carcasses. Horses, cattle, dogs, anything that died in the streets or fields nearby. This wasn't a clean process. You would have to drag, butcher, and dispose of often putrefying animal remains, often without proper tools. The smell was unimaginable, attracting swarms of flies and rats. The risk of disease from infected animals, sharp tools, and constant contact with decaying flesh was incredibly high. Knackers often lived on the outskirts of towns, shunned by society, their homes surrounded by the remnants of their gruesome trade. This profound exposure to decay was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of foodborne illness, with modern meat processing regulations and refrigeration in a brightly lit modern supermarket in, say, suburban Des Moines, Iowa. Historians still widely debate the precise economic significance of byproduct utilization, GEE, bones, hides, tallow from dead animals by ancient knackers and flayers, and whether their grim trade, beyond mere waste disposal, sometimes played a crucial, albeit unacknowledged role in pre-industrial economies. Then there were the grave diggers and those who handled the dead during epidemics. While grave digging is still a profession today, in ancient and medieval plague times, it became a terrifying, high-risk job. Imagine during the Black Death, when bodies piled up faster than they could be buried. You, as a grave digger, would be handling hundreds of corpses daily, often showing gruesome signs of the disease, with no masks, no gloves, no understanding of how the plague spread. You knew that every body you touched, every breath you took in the reeking atmosphere, could be your last. Many grave diggers simply succumbed to the very disease they were burying. It truly sucked to be a plague grave digger. And finally, the terrifying figure of the plague doctor. While often romanticized with their bird-like masks, the reality was bleak. These individuals, often untrained or failed physicians, were hired by cities to treat victims of the plague during outbreaks. Their treatments were usually useless, remember our discussion in Chapter 2, and their primary job became recording deaths, witnessing agonizing suffering, and occasionally performing grotesque procedures. Their iconic masks were often filled with aromatic herbs, not to protect them from disease they didn't understand germs, but to ward off the stench of decay. They were living symbols of death, shunned even by the healthy, constantly surrounded by dying patients, knowing their own fate was likely to be the same. This wasn't the heroic, albeit challenging role of a modern doctor battling a new virus in a cutting-edge isolation ward in, say, Atlanta, Georgia. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable mortality. The jobs of those who dealt with filth, death, and disease in ancient cities were not just physically demanding, they were psychologically scarring. The constant exposure to the worst aspects of human existence, the social ostracism, and the ever-present threat of infection all were terrifying harbingers of dubious survival. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their roles were not just professions. They were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every breath, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, societal menace. These were the unsung, often reviled, laborers who kept ancient cities from collapsing entirely under their own filth. They remind us of the profound advancements in public health, sanitation, and medical understanding that allow us to live in relatively clean, disease-free urban environments today, making us appreciate the incredible, often unnoticed, comfort of simply not having to live amidst pervasive stench and constant fear of infection. Let's gently return from the grim reality of filth and fury, urban life's unsavory roles, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of gong farmers and plague doctors. If Chapter 3 explored the disgusting aspects of urban existence, tonight we'll delve into the sheer, unimaginable physical suffering endured by those who built the ancient world's wonders, the body as tool, brutal physical labor. We're going to explore the stark, often dehumanizing, reality of how colossal structures were erected and early industries fueled by the sheer force of human muscle, contemplating how individuals, often enslaved or coerced, face the chilling prospect of unrelenting toil, crushing accidents, and premature death, transforming every quarry into a death trap and every construction site into a theater of agony, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of monumental achievement often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar task a testament to their desperate desire for monumental construction, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself, now, a laborer on an ancient construction site. Perhaps akin to a diligent civil engineer from a modern construction firm in, say, Houston, Texas, accustomed to heavy machinery, safety regulations, and ergonomic considerations. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives a grim thought after Chapter 1, the terrifying medical practices from Chapter 2, and the pervasive urban squalor from Chapter 3. And now you face the relentless, bone-shattering demands of building truly colossal structures with nothing but raw human strength and rudimentary tools. There are no power tools, no hydraulic lifts, no safety harnesses, no workers' compensation, and certainly no concept of maximum working hours or break times, as found in a modern construction site in, say, contemporary Chicago, Illinois. Instead, you witness or are constantly engaged in tasks that involve lifting impossibly heavy stones, pushing massive levers, or operating dangerous hand-powered machinery, all under the scorching sun or in dangerous, unstable quarries, every moment fraught with the risk of crushing injury or immediate death. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern industrial labor. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound assault on your understanding of physical endurance and human dignity. Consider yourself a nervous stonecutter, chipping away at a massive block of granite, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you hear the distant screams of a collapsing scaffold, knowing that your own life hangs by a thread, your body bracing for the inevitable. Peculiar violence and profound despair of a daily existence defined by brutal, relentless toil and profound despair, or perhaps a concerned occupational safety expert, studying historical accounts of ancient mining operations in, say, ancient Roman Spain, recognizing the detached efficiency with which human lives were sacrificed for mineral wealth, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient physical labor, far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of workplace accidents with modern safety protocols and labor unions in a brightly lit modern factory in, say, suburban Detroit, Michigan. The hushed whispers of exhaustion, once a gentle murmur of complaint, now mingle with the chilling sounds of cracking stone and desperate grunts. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of sweat and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying injury, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate grandiosity often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on physical suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling, reality of the body as tool, brutal physical labor, where the very essence of ancient construction was not about profound engineering ingenuity or collective well-being, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming a daily shift into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting achievement often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar task a testament to their desperate desire for monumental construction, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you marvel at the pyramids of Egypt, the Roman Colosseum, or the Great Wall of China, you might imagine genius architects and powerful emperors. But behind every colossal stone and every mile of mortar lies the untold agony of countless laborers whose bodies were literally the tools of construction. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of terrible jobs that don't exist anymore and more, focusing on the relentless suffering of the body as brutal physical labor. A common historical truth is that the construction of monumental ancient structures and the operation of early industries like mining or large-scale agriculture relied almost entirely on brute human strength, often provided by vast numbers of enslaved individuals, forced laborers, or highly exploited commoners. These jobs involved continuous, back-breaking toil, severe risks of injury from falling stones, collapsing tunnels, or rudimentary tools, exposure to extreme elements, and inadequate nutrition and rest. leading to high mortality rates, chronic pain, and premature aging, reflecting a brutal reality where human bodies were treated as disposable machines to achieve grand engineering feats or extract valuable resources, with no regard for worker safety or well-being. Historians still widely debate the precise proportion of enslaved versus free labor employed in specific ancient mega-projects, e.g., the Egyptian pyramids, Roman aqueducts, and whether the brutal conditions were universally applied or varied depending on the social status or origin of the laborers. Imagine yourself, then, a pyramid builder in ancient Egypt, perhaps one of the thousands of men hauling massive blocks of stone across the desert. Akin to a diligent modern construction worker from a skyscraper project in, say, downtown Dallas, Texas, accustomed to precise blueprints and powerful cranes. Your job is to move stones weighing many tons, often from quarries miles away, to the construction site, then lift them hundreds of feet into the air. You're pulling on ropes alongside dozens of others, straining every muscle under the relentless scorching sun. There are no machines, no hydraulics, just ramps, rollers, and sheer manpower. A rope snaps, a roller slips, a block shifts, and you're crushed instantly or maimed for life. The dust clogs your lungs, the sun bakes your skin, and the overseer's whip keeps you moving if your pace falters. Your diet is meager, your rest minimal. You're literally working yourself to death to build a tomb for a god king. It truly sucked to be a pyramid builder. The sheer scale of these projects, combined with the primitive technology, meant that human bodies were consumed by the work. The lifespan of a laborer on such a site was significantly shortened. This wasn't the regulated, safety-conscious environment of a modern large-scale infrastructure project, with strict deadlines but also extensive worker protections in, say, the Hoover Dam in Nevada. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable physical degradation. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about the body as tool brutal physical labor is the curious phenomenon of ancient Roman bakers using human-powered treadmill mills, where, in large Roman bakeries, particularly those supplying the vast city of Rome, the grinding of grain was often done by large, circular treadmill-like mills that were powered not by animals or water, but by human laborers, often enslaved people or condemned criminals who would trudge endlessly inside the massive wooden wheels, day after day, performing a grueling, monotonous, and physically exhausting task that amounted to being a human engine. This subtle, chilling mechanism served not just as an efficient for the Romans way to produce flour, but subtly as a living testament to human exploitation, or a desperate, clandestine attempt to reduce humans to mere cogs in an industrial machine, highlighting a pervasive blend of ancient ingenuity and the deeply disturbing willingness to commodify human muscle for basic production. Imagine yourself walking endlessly inside a giant wooden wheel, covered in flour dust, feeling your muscles burn, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to be a human treadmill. Consider also the job of a miner in ancient Greece or Rome. Perhaps in the infamous silver mines of Lorient in Attica, akin to a diligent modern mining engineer from a highly mechanized, safety-focused mine in, say, Wyoming's coal country. Your workplace is a dark, claustrophobic tunnel, hundreds of feet underground, with no ventilation. You're chipping away at rock face with a hammer and chisel, often on your knees, in suffocating heat and dust. There's no electric light, just flickering oil lamps that barely illuminate the immediate area. Cave-ins are a constant threat. The air is thick with dust, causing chronic lung disease. The work is relentless, often done in shifts that last until exhaustion. Many miners were enslaved, branded, and worked until they died, their bodies simply left in the tunnels. This profound confinement and risk of collapse was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of mining accidents with modern safety equipment and rescue teams in a brightly lit modern mine in, say, suburban Salt Lake City, Utah. Historians still widely debate the precise environmental impact of large-scale ancient mining operations on local ecosystems, i.e., deforestation, water pollution from lead or mercury processing, and whether ancient societies recognized these long-term consequences of their resource extraction. Then there were the laborers involved in agricultural megaprojects, especially in regions dependent on massive irrigation. Imagine constructing and maintaining the vast network of canals in ancient Mesopotamia or the dikes in early China. Often using only baskets and shovels, you're moving enormous quantities of earth, sometimes in swampy, mosquito-infested areas, battling floods and drought, all to feed a growing population and a demanding ruling class. The work was endless, seasonally intense, and critically important, but offered little personal reward beyond bare subsistence. It truly sucked to be an ancient canal digger. Even simpler, seemingly less grand tasks, like carrying water in ancient cities, were brutal. Imagine hauling heavy amphorae of water from a distant well or fountain to your home, multiple times a day, in all weather conditions, simply to meet your family's basic needs. This wasn't the convenient turn of a tap in a modern kitchen in, say, a quiet suburban home in Atlanta, Georgia. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable physical exertion for basic survival. The jobs that relied on the human body as a brute tool were not just physically demanding, they were dehumanizing. The constant pain, the omnipresent danger, the premature aging, and the lack of any dignity or comfort all were terrifying harbingers of dubious survival. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their labor was not just a means of production, it was the terrifying stage for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every straining muscle, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, societal menace. These were the individuals whose silent suffering built the foundations of civilization. Their aching muscles, broken bones, and short, brutal lives stand as a stark reminder of the immense human cost behind the ancient world's most impressive achievements. They make us appreciate the profound advancements in technology and, more importantly, in labor rights and human dignity that ensure most modern construction and industrial work, while still demanding, does not routinely consume human lives in the same horrifying manner. Let's gently return from the grim reality of the body as tool, brutal physical labor, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of human treadmills and pyramid builders. If Chapter 4 explored the sheer physical agony of ancient construction, tonight we'll delve into the utterly terrifying and often solitary roles involved in ancient communication and transportation, perilous pathways, dangerous transportation jobs. We're going to explore the stark, often dehumanizing, reality of how vital messages and goods moved across vast, untamed landscapes. Contemplating how individuals, from lone couriers to early mariners, faced the chilling prospect of constant danger from bandits, wild animals, natural disasters, and the sheer unforgiving nature of the environment, transforming every journey into a desperate gamble for survival and every delivery into a potential death sentence, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of basic connection often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar task a testament to their desperate desire for communication, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself now, a messenger or a merchant in ancient times, perhaps akin to a diligent logistics manager from a modern e-commerce giant in, say, Seattle, Washington, accustomed to GPS tracking, secure cargo, and efficient delivery networks. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives, a grim thought after Chapter 1, the terrifying medical practices from Chapter 2, the pervasive urban squalor from Chapter 3, and the relentless physical labor from Chapter 4. And now you face the constant, immediate threats of simply moving from one place to another. There are no paved roads or very few, no reliable maps, no police escorts, no emergency services, and certainly no concept of commercial insurance or safe travel advisories. As found in a modern transportation system in, say, contemporary New York City, instead, you witness or are constantly exposed to ambushes by bandits, attacks by wild animals, treacherous weather, and the ever-present risk of getting lost in unforgiving wilderness, all while carrying valuable information or goods, every moment fraught with the risk of robbery, injury, or immediate death. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern global logistics. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing, a profound assault on your understanding of personal safety and reliable travel. Consider yourself a nervous courier, hurrying through a dense, ancient forest, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you hear the distant howl of wolves or the rustle of unseen figures, knowing that your life and your message are constantly at risk, your body bracing for the inevitable, peculiar violence and profound despair of a daily existence defined by brutal, relentless danger and profound despair. Or perhaps a concerned maritime historian, studying historical accounts of ancient shipwrecks in, say, the Mediterranean Sea, recognizing the detached efficiency with which human lives were sacrificed to the elements, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient travel. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of flight delays with modern air traffic control and comfortable passenger jets in a brightly lit modern airport in, say, suburban Atlanta, Georgia, the hushed whispers of the wind, once a gentle murmur of nature, now mingle with the chilling sounds of creaking ships and desperate cries, the pervasive, almost palpable scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal calamity. Thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate connection often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on physical suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling, reality of perilous pathways, dangerous transportation jobs, where the very essence of ancient travel was not about profound personal enjoyment or collective well-being, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming a daily journey into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting communication often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar task a testament to their desperate desire for connection, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you send a text, make a phone call, or order something online, you take for granted the incredible ease and safety of modern communication and transportation. But in the ancient world, getting a message or a parcel from point A to point B was often a death-defying feat, a job so fraught with peril that few would dare to undertake it today. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of terrible jobs that don't exist anymore and more, focusing on the pervasive dread of perilous pathways, dangerous transportation jobs. A common historical truth is that ancient transportation and communication roles were inherently dangerous due to unpredictable natural environments, lack of infrastructure, and the constant threat of banditry. Jobs like lone couriers, e.g., Roman cursus publicus riders, early postal runners, long-distance caravan guards, and ancient mariners faced extreme risks from harsh weather, wild animals, treacherous terrain mountains, deserts, disease, and violent attacks, often leading to loss of life, cargo, or vital messages. Reflecting a brutal reality where the very act of moving goods or information across distances was a high-stakes gamble with life and limb, lacking any significant safety nets or protections. Historians still widely debate the precise economic impact of pervasive banditry on ancient trade routes, and whether the perceived risks disproportionately affected certain types of goods or specific geographical areas, thereby shaping economic development. Imagine yourself, then, a foot courier for the Persian Empire, perhaps akin to a diligent modern bicycle messenger in, say, downtown Boston, Massachusetts, accustomed to traffic laws and city navigation apps. Your job is to carry vital messages or small, precious parcels across hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles of untamed territory. You walk or run, alone or in a small, vulnerable group, through scorching deserts, across freezing mountain passes, and through dense predator-filled forests. There are no marked trails, just rudimentary paths, and sometimes no path at all. You rely on your wits, your endurance, and perhaps a small knife for defense. Bandits are a constant threat, lurking in ambush points, ready to rob, injure, or kill you for your cargo or simply for the thrill of it. Wild animals, bears, wolves. Big cats are equally dangerous, viewing you as an easy meal. You sleep exposed to the elements, always with one eye open. Your life is entirely expendable compared to the importance of the message. It truly sucked to be an ancient foot courier. The famous neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds refers to the Persian and later Roman postal systems. While romanticized, it highlights the sheer dedication and endurance required. Many didn't make it. This wasn't the relatively safe, albeit sometimes stressful, job of a modern mail carrier, with predictable routes and protected vehicles in, say, suburban Phoenix, Arizona. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter inescapable vulnerability. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about perilous pathways. Dangerous transportation jobs is the curious phenomenon of ancient Egyptian tomb robbers using specialized river navigators to smuggle loot. Where, in the chaotic aftermath of the New Kingdom's decline, professional tomb robbers, who often formed organized gangs, would sometimes employ highly skilled, albeit illicit, river navigators to transport their illegally acquired treasures, gold, artifacts, mummies down the Nile River to distant markets. These navigators possessed intricate knowledge of hidden channels, dangerous currents, and obscure landing spots to evade detection by royal patrols, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of criminal enterprise and the deeply disturbing willingness to risk death from the authorities or the river itself for illicit gain. Imagine yourself navigating a rickety boat full of stolen relics down a moonlit river. Every ripple a potential patrol boat, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden dangers they faced daily. It truly sucked to be a tomb robber's navigator. Consider also the job of an ancient mariner, specifically those on long-distance trading voyages in the Mediterranean or Indian Ocean. Perhaps akin to a diligent modern cargo ship captain from a major shipping company in, say, Long Beach, California, accustomed to radar, GPS, and weather forecasting. Your vessel is a wooden ship, prone to leaks, dependent entirely on the wind. There are no accurate charts, no reliable weather reports beyond basic observation, and no concept of search and rescue if you go down. Storms could appear without warning, shattering your ship against rocky coastlines or capsizing you in open water. Pirates were a constant, terrifying threat, ready to board your ship, kill your crew, and steal your cargo, or worse, enslave you. Disease ran rampant on long voyages due to poor sanitation and nutrition. The constant rocking of the ship, the endless monotony, and the sheer terror of unpredictable nature made every journey a gamble. This profound exposure to the elements and human predation was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of shipping delays with modern satellite communication and well-maintained fleets in a brightly lit modern port in, say, suburban Houston, Texas. Historians still widely debate the precise economic impact of piracy on ancient maritime trade routes, and whether certain periods or regions were disproportionately affected, thereby influencing the development of naval power or diplomatic alliances. Then there were the caravan guards along the Silk Road, protecting valuable goods across vast, desolate territories. Imagine traversing the deserts of Central Asia, where thirst and exposure were as deadly as any human foe. Your job is to defend camel trains laden with silk, spices, and precious metals from well-organized bandit gangs who often outnumbered you. You sleep with one eye open, your weapon clutched tightly. Every oasis could be an ambush point, every pass a chokehold. The journey could take months. Through extreme temperatures with limited water and food, many didn't survive, leaving their bones to bleach in the desert sun, their cargo plundered. It truly sucked to be a caravan guard. Even the seemingly simple act of driving a chariot or cart in ancient cities was perilous. The streets were often unpaved, uneven, and crowded. Accidents were frequent, with carts overturning, horses spooking, and pedestrians being run over. There were no traffic laws, no streetlights, and often little regard for human life. For a driver, a simple delivery could end in a broken limb or worse. A constant reminder of the fragility of life in a less regulated world. This wasn't the controlled environment of a modern delivery driver, with GPS and traffic signals in, say, a quiet suburban neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable chaos. The jobs involved in ancient transportation and communication were not just physically demanding, they were terrifyingly unpredictable. The constant threat of violence, natural disaster, and the sheer unforgiving environment all were terrifying harbingers of dubious arrival. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their journeys were not just routes, they were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every step, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, societal menace. These were the individuals who, against incredible odds, kept the ancient world connected, moving messages and goods that were vital for empires to function. Their constant vigilance, their endurance, and their ultimate sacrifice forged the pathways that allowed civilizations to interact. They make us appreciate the marvels of modern travel and communication, from instant global messages to secure supply chains, and the profound comfort of knowing that your package, or your message, will almost certainly arrive safely, without someone having to risk their life in the process. Let's gently return from the grim reality of perilous pathways. Dangerous transportation jobs, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of lone couriers facing bandits and mariners battling ancient storms? If Chapter 5 explored the physical dangers of movement, tonight we'll delve into the darkest, most dehumanizing aspect of ancient economies: human commodities, the slave trade's cruelties. We're going to explore the stark, often morally abhorrent, reality of how entire populations were reduced to property, bought, sold, and forced to perform labor under unimaginably brutal conditions. Contemplating how individuals, from captured warriors to innocent children, face the chilling prospect of losing not just their freedom, but their very identity, transforming every human life into a tool for profit and every enslaved person into a symbol of profound degradation, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of immense wealth and power often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar transaction a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself, now, an individual captured and forced into slavery, perhaps akin to a diligent human rights lawyer from a modern international court in, say, The Hague, Netherlands. Accustomed to advocating for universal rights and condemning exploitation, you've grappled with the brutal daily lives a grim thought after Chapter 1, the terrifying medical practices from Chapter 2, the pervasive urban squalor from Chapter 3, the relentless physical labor from Chapter 4, and the perilous journeys from Chapter 5. And now you face the ultimate loss, the obliteration of your own personhood. There are no legal protections, no concepts of personal liberty, no international conventions against human trafficking, and certainly no hope of appeal or redress, as found in a modern justice system in, say, contemporary Washington, D.C. Instead, you witness or are subjected to auctions where families are torn apart, forced marches to distant lands, and endless back-breaking toil under the constant threat of violence, all for the profit and convenience of others, every moment fraught with the risk of physical abuse, sexual exploitation, or immediate death. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern labor markets. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound assault on your understanding of human dignity and inherent worth. Consider yourself a nervous captive, standing on a bustling slave block, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you watch your children being sold to a different owner, knowing that your life is no longer your own, your body bracing for the inevitable, peculiar violence and profound despair of a daily existence defined by brutal, relentless servitude and profound despair. Or perhaps a concerned sociologist, studying historical accounts of ancient slave economies in, say, ancient Rome, recognizing the detached efficiency with which human beings were commodified and exploited, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient slavery. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of economic inequality with modern social welfare programs and labor laws in a brightly lit modern office in, say, suburban New York City. The hushed whispers of despair, once a gentle murmur of complaint, now mingle with the chilling sounds of clanking chains and desperate pleas. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal violations, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate economic gain often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on human suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling, reality of human commodities, the slave trade's cruelties, where the very essence of ancient economic power was not about profound collective well-being or shared prosperity, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming a human life into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting prosperity often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar transaction a testament to their desperate desire for control and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of a commodity, you probably picture oil, grain, or perhaps rare minerals. But for much of ancient history, the most valuable and widely traded commodity was human beings. Entire economies, vast empires, and the lifestyles of the elite were built on the brutal foundation of the slave trade. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of terrible jobs that don't exist anymore and more. Focusing on the utterly dehumanizing reality of human commodities, the slave trade's cruelties. A common historical truth is that slavery was a fundamental institution in most ancient civilizations, including Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and Rome, where enslaved individuals, acquired through conquest, debt, or birth, constituted a significant portion of the population and performed a wide range of labor, from agricultural and mining to domestic and intellectual tasks. Their lives were characterized by complete lack of freedom, constant threat of physical violence, sexual abuse, family separation, and arbitrary death, serving as mere property of their owners with no legal rights or protections. reflecting a brutal reality where human beings were systematically dehumanized and exploited to fuel the economic and social structures of powerful empires. Historians still widely debate the precise economic efficiency of slave labor versus free labor in various ancient contexts, and whether the pervasive reliance on slavery ultimately stifled innovation or contributed to long-term social and economic inequalities that led to the decline of some ancient societies. Imagine yourself, then, a newly enslaved person in ancient Rome, perhaps captured during a foreign campaign, akin to a diligent modern historian from a major university in, say, Yale, Connecticut, meticulously studying the social structures of ancient empires. One day, you are a free citizen of your own land. The next, you are marched in chains, often naked, to a bustling slave market in a Roman city like Delos. Greece. Here, you are paraded, inspected, and sold like an animal. Families are ripped apart, never to see each other again. You might be sold to work in the brutal silver mines of Spain, where conditions were so horrific that few survived more than a few years. Or perhaps you're sent to a vast latifundium, a large agricultural estate, where you toil in the fields from dawn till dusk under the lash of an overseer. Your body is perpetually exhausted, your spirit crushed. You own nothing, not even your own body. Your life belongs to your master, who can do with you as they please, even kill you, with little to no legal consequence. It truly sucked to be sold into slavery. This wasn't a temporary hardship or a period of forced labor. It was a permanent, inherited status. Children born to enslaved mothers were automatically enslaved, perpetuating the cycle of dehumanization. This wasn't the structured, albeit often unjust system of modern incarceration. With legal processes and theoretically rehabilitation efforts, in, say, a modern prison in Folsom, California, this was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable loss of self. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about human commodities. The slave trade's cruelties is the curious phenomenon of ancient Roman slaves being trained as professional vomit collectors during banquets. Where, in the lavish, often gluttonous dining habits of wealthy Roman elites, some enslaved individuals were specifically designated and trained for the deeply humiliating and disgusting job of holding bowls for their masters to vomit into during prolonged banquets. This subtle, chilling practice served not just as a convenience for overindulgent Romans, but subtly as a living reminder of utter subjugation or a desperate, clandestine attempt to showcase the master's absolute power and the slave's complete degradation. Highlighting a pervasive blend of opulent excess and the deeply disturbing commodification of human dignity. Imagine yourself kneeling silently, holding a bowl, waiting for your master to throw up. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to be a vomit collector. Consider also the job of a galley slave in ancient and medieval navies. If you were a prisoner of war or a condemned criminal, you might be sentenced to row on a war galley. You were chained to your oar, often naked, exposed to the elements, and forced to row for hours on end without rest, under the constant threat of the whip. The stench of sweat, urine, and sickness was pervasive. Your diet was meager. Your water ration barely enough to survive. Many died at their oars from exhaustion, disease, or battle. There was no escape, no reprieve, only the endless back-breaking rhythm of the oar. This profound confinement and physical torment was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of crowded commutes with modern public transportation and ergonomic seating in a brightly lit modern subway car in, say, downtown New York City. Historians still widely debate the precise economic rationale for using galley slaves versus free rowers in various ancient and medieval navies, and whether the perceived cost-effectiveness of slave labor outweighed the often lower efficiency and greater risk of rebellion associated with forced rowers. Then there were the enslaved domestic servants, often living within the household but subject to the arbitrary whims of their owners. While some might have received slightly better treatment than those in mines or fields, their lives were still utterly precarious. They faced the constant threat of physical abuse, sexual violence, and arbitrary punishment. A master's bad mood, a perceived slight, or simply boredom could lead to brutal beatings or even death. Their job was to anticipate every need of their owners, to be invisible yet always present, to serve without question, and to endure every indignity. Their bodies, their time, and their very existence were entirely at the disposal of another. It truly sucked to be a domestic slave. Even the process of acquiring enslaved people was a horrific job. The slave raiders and dealers engaged in brutal acts of violence, kidnapping, and deception to obtain their merchandise. They would burn villages, slaughter those who resisted, and march their captives for hundreds of miles, often starving and diseased, to the nearest market. Their business was built on human misery, a chilling testament to the capacity for human cruelty when profit is the sole driver. This wasn't the regulated, albeit sometimes morally complex, world of modern international trade, with ethical sourcing guidelines and supply chain transparency initiatives in, say, a quiet corporate boardroom in Geneva, Switzerland. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing, a profound engagement with utter, inescapable human depravity. The jobs associated with the slave trade, both for the enslaved and those who enforced the system, were not just physically demanding, they were morally bankrupt. The systemic dehumanization, the constant violence, the stripping away of identity, and the brutal exploitation of millions all were terrifying harbingers of dubious prosperity, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their existence was not just a societal function, it was the terrifying stage for a silent, desperate performance, a constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every breath, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen yet deeply felt, dehumanizing menace. These were the individuals who endured and perpetuated the profound cruelty of slavery. Their immense suffering reminds us of the long, arduous journey humanity has taken towards recognizing universal human rights and the inherent dignity of every person. It makes us appreciate the freedom, the self-determination, and the legal protections we now largely take for granted, and the profound comfort of living in a world where, at least in most places, the buying and selling of human beings is unequivocally condemned as a crime against humanity. Let's gently return from the grim reality of human commodities. The slave trade's cruelties, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of gladiatorial vomit collectors and human auctions. If Chapter 6 exposed the utter dehumanization of slavery, tonight we'll delve into the chilling spectacle and often brutal fate of those who entertained the ancient masses. The stage of suffering entertainment's dark side. We're going to explore the stark, often morally abhorrent, reality of how amusement in ancient times frequently involved immense personal risk, forced combat, and the exploitation of both humans and animals for public spectacle. Contemplating how individuals, from celebrated gladiators to anonymous animal handlers, faced the chilling prospect of a violent, often ignominious death for the pleasure of the crowd, transforming every arena into a bloody stage and every performance into a desperate struggle for survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of public spectacle often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar performance a testament to their desperate desire for fleeting fame, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself now, an entertainer in ancient times, perhaps akin to a diligent professional athlete from a modern sports league in, say, the NFL, accustomed to rigorous training, professional contracts, and extensive safety protocols. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives, a grim thought after Chapter 1, the terrifying medical practices from Chapter 2, the pervasive urban squalor from Chapter 3, the relentless physical labor from Chapter 4, the perilous journeys from Chapter 5, and the dehumanizing specter of slavery from Chapter 6. And now you face the constant, immediate threats of performing for a bloodthirsty audience. There are no player unions, no guaranteed contracts, no advanced medical teams, no rules protecting against serious injury or death, and certainly no concept of ethical treatment of performers or animal welfare. As found in a modern entertainment industry in, say, contemporary Las Vegas, Nevada, instead, you witness or are constantly engaged in life or death combat, facing wild animals, or performing dangerous feats, all for the roar of the crowd and the distant chance of freedom or fleeting glory. Every moment fraught with the risk of dismemberment, grievous wounds, or immediate death. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern professional sports. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound assault on your understanding of human dignity and the value of a single life. Consider yourself a nervous gladiator, standing in the dark spoliarium beneath the arena, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you hear the roar of the crowd above, knowing that your next breath might be your last, your body bracing for the inevitable. Peculiar violence and profound despair of a daily existence defined by brutal, relentless combat and profound despair, or perhaps a concerned animal rights activist, studying historical accounts of ancient animal hunts in, say, the Roman Colosseum, recognizing the detached efficiency with which wild beasts were captured and slaughtered for entertainment, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those involved in ancient spectacles, far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of sports injuries with modern protective gear and rehabilitation clinics in a brightly lit modern stadium in, say, suburban Arlington, Texas. The hushed whispers of anticipation, once a gentle murmur of excitement, now mingle with the chilling sounds of clashing steel and desperate roars, the pervasive, almost palpable scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying death. Thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world, where the pursuit of ultimate entertainment often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on physical suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling reality of the stage of suffering entertainment's dark side, where the very essence of ancient spectacle was not about profound artistic expression or shared joy, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming a performance into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that, in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting amusement often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar display a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of entertainment today, you might picture concerts, movies, or sporting events, all enjoyed from a comfortable, safe distance. But in the ancient world, entertainment often meant blood, pain, and death. Not just for the animals, but for the human performers themselves. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of terrible jobs that don't exist anymore and more, focusing on the pervasive dread of the stage of suffering entertainment's dark side. A common historical truth is that many forms of ancient entertainment, particularly in the Roman Empire, were exceptionally brutal and dangerous, featuring spectacles like gladiatorial combat, public executions, and wild animal hunts venationes where both human participants often enslaved individuals, condemned criminals, or professional fighters and exotic animals faced severe injury or certain death for public amusement. These jobs offered fleeting fame for a lucky few, but guaranteed a life of intense training, constant pain, and extreme risk, with little chance of long-term survival, reflecting a brutal reality where entertainment was synonymous with violence, and the lives of performers were deemed expendable for the pleasure of the masses. Historians still widely debate the precise level of agency and social status accorded to some professional gladiators. and whether the perceived glory of their profession ever truly offset the constant threat of a violent and humiliating death in the arena. Imagine yourself, then, a gladiator in ancient Rome. Perhaps a former warrior captured in battle, akin to a diligent modern martial artist from a highly competitive mixed martial arts gym in, say, Las Vegas, Nevada, accustomed to disciplined training and regulated fights. Your job is to fight to the death, or at least to severe injury, for the roaring crowds in colossal arenas like the Colosseum. You are trained rigorously in a ludus, a gladiatorial school where discipline is brutal, and death during training is not uncommon. You learn to wield various weapons, sword, trident, net, often against opponents armed differently. When you enter the arena, you face not just another trained fighter, but perhaps a wild beast like a lion, bear, or tiger, or even multiple opponents. Your every move is judged by thousands. A thumbs down from the emperor means instant death, even if you are wounded but still alive. Your body is a canvas of scars, your life a countdown to your inevitable end. It truly sucked to be a gladiator. While some gladiators did win their freedom and even achieved a form of celebrity, the vast majority lived short, brutal lives, defined by constant violence and pain. This wasn't the controlled environment of a modern boxing match or MMA fight, with weight classes, rounds, and ringside doctors in, say, a brightly lit arena in Atlantic City, New Jersey. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable physical trauma. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about the stage of suffering. Entertainment's dark side is the curious phenomenon of ancient Roman pneumachia engineers designing custom-built temporary lakes for naval battles, where, for particularly spectacular Roman spectacles, engineers would construct vast temporary artificial lakes within arenas like the Circus Maximus or even the Colosseum itself. For brief periods that could be flooded with water to stage full-scale mock naval battles, complete with miniature warships and hundreds, sometimes thousands of combatants. This incredibly complex and dangerous job of engineering, managing and draining such massive temporary bodies of water for pure entertainment, subtly highlights a pervasive blend of Roman ingenuity and the deeply disturbing willingness to expend immense resources and lives for fleeting public spectacle. Imagine yourself overseeing the flooding of a massive arena, knowing that a structural failure could drown thousands, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden dangers they manage daily. It truly sucked to be a pneumachia engineer. Consider also the job of an animal handler for the Venetians' wild beast hunts in Roman arenas. Your job is to capture, transport, and then unleash ferocious wild animals, lions from Africa, bears from Europe, panthers from Asia into the arena for combat with gladiators or condemned criminals. This involves incredibly dangerous work in distant lands, trapping large predators, then keeping them contained and transporting them thousands of miles, often across the sea. Once in Rome, you are responsible for herding these terrified and aggressive animals into the arena, directly exposing yourself to their deadly claws and teeth. Accidents were common, and death by mauling was an ever-present risk. This profound proximity to dangerous predators was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of zoo animal escapes with modern tranquilizer darts and secure enclosures in a brightly lit modern zoo in, say, suburban San Diego, California. Historians still widely debate the precise ecological impact of the Roman Venaciones on the wild animal populations of North Africa and parts of Europe, and whether the extensive capture of large predators for arena games contributed to the localized extinction of certain species in those regions. Then there were the performers in public executions, which were often a form of entertainment. While not a job in the traditional sense, individuals condemned to death often faced elaborate, torturous, and public executions designed to be a spectacle. They might be forced to participate in reenactments of mythological stories, where the condemned played the role of a suffering hero, only to be brutally killed in the end. Imagine being forced to die slowly and painfully, not just as punishment, but as a public show for a cheering, jeering crowd. It truly sucked to be publicly executed. Even seemingly less dangerous entertainment roles could be brutal. Consider charioteers in the Roman circus. While highly celebrated and often wealthy if successful, their sport was incredibly dangerous. Races involved multiple chariots, often crashing into each other at high speeds, dragging drivers who became entangled in their reins. Injuries were common, and fatal crashes frequent. The constant risk of being trampled by horses or crushed by a crashing chariot meant a short, violent career for many. This wasn't the contained speed of a modern NASCAR race, with roll cages, safety barriers, and immediate medical response in, say, a well-controlled racetrack in Daytona. Florida? This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable mechanical peril. The jobs involved in ancient entertainment were not just physically demanding, they were morally reprehensible. The systemic exploitation of human and animal life, the celebration of violence, and the utter disregard for suffering all were terrifying harbingers of dubious amusement, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their performances were not just spectacles, they were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every breath, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, dehumanizing menace. These were the individuals who provided the grisly entertainment for ancient empires. Their agony often the highlight of a Roman holiday. Their immense suffering reminds us of the long, arduous journey humanity has taken towards valuing individual life, rejecting cruelty, and developing forms of entertainment that do not rely on the brutal exploitation of others. It makes us appreciate the ethical standards, safety regulations, and humane considerations that largely govern modern sports and entertainment, and the profound comfort of knowing that the performers you watch are, by and large, not fighting for their lives, but for their passion, their skill, and their well-being. Let's gently return from the grim reality of the stage of suffering. Entertainment's dark side, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of gladiators fighting to the death and animals being slaughtered for show. If Chapter 7 exposed the brutal exploitation for amusement, tonight we'll delve into an even more unsettling realm, the dangerous and often self-sacrificing roles of early scientists and innovators. Welcome to Knowledge at a Cost Risky Scientific Pursuits. We're going to explore the stark, often utterly terrifying, reality of how pioneering individuals in ancient and pre-modern times pursued understanding, frequently risking their lives, their sanity, and their social standing to probe the unknown. Contemplating how early anatomists, alchemists, and astronomers faced the chilling prospect of disease, explosion, or persecution, transforming every experiment into a potential disaster and every discovery into a source of suspicion, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of knowledge often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar inquiry a testament to their desperate desire for understanding and every brutal consequence a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself, now, an early seeker of knowledge, perhaps akin to a diligent modern research scientist from a cutting-edge laboratory in, say, Cambridge, Massachusetts, accustomed to strict safety protocols, peer review, and robust funding. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives of grim thought after Chapter 1, the terrifying medical practices from Chapter 2, the pervasive urban squalor from Chapter 3, the relentless physical labor from Chapter 4, the perilous journeys from Chapter 5, the dehumanizing specter of slavery from Chapter 6, and the gruesome entertainment from Chapter 7. And now you face the intellectual and physical dangers of probing the unknown with limited tools and even more limited understanding. There are no safety goggles, no fume hoods, no ethical review boards, no concept of intellectual property protection, and certainly no supportive academic community, as found in a modern scientific institution in, say, contemporary Menlo Park. California, instead, you witness or are constantly engaged in experiments that involve volatile chemicals, dissecting human remains often illegally, or making observations that challenge religious dogma, all while facing the risk of chemical burns, lethal infection, or outright persecution for heresy. Every moment fraught with the risk of personal harm or immediate death. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed system of modern scientific inquiry. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound assault on your understanding of personal safety and intellectual freedom. Consider yourself a nervous alchemist, stirring a bubbling concoction in a dimly lit workshop, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you hear the glass alembic crack, knowing that an uncontrolled reaction could blind or kill you, your body bracing for the inevitable, peculiar violence and profound despair of a daily existence defined by brutal, relentless experimentation and profound despair, or perhaps a concerned bioethicist, studying historical accounts of early anatomical dissections in, say, Renaissance Italy, recognizing the detached efficiency with which human cadavers were obtained, often from gallows and explored, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient scientific pursuit. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of grant rejections with modern tenure tracks and professional conferences in a brightly lit modern university campus in, say, suburban Princeton, New Jersey, the hushed whispers of chemical reactions, once a gentle murmur of scientific promise, now mingle with the chilling sounds of breaking glass and desperate coughs. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of strange fumes and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal injury, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate knowledge often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on physical suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling, reality of knowledge at a cost risky scientific pursuits, where the very essence of ancient inquiry was not about profound collective advancement or shared understanding, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness. Transforming a curious experiment into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting insight often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar observation a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of a scientist, you might picture someone in a white lab coat, meticulously conducting experiments in a sterile environment. But in the ancient and pre-modern world, the pursuit of knowledge often meant venturing into the unknown with crude tools, no safety nets, and the very real risk of grave injury, public humiliation, or even execution for challenging established beliefs. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of terrible jobs that don't exist anymore and more, focusing on the pervasive dread of knowledge at a cost-risky scientific pursuits. A common historical truth is that early scientific inquiry, particularly in fields like anatomy, chemistry, alchemy, and astronomy, was fraught with extreme personal danger due to a lack of safety protocols, the use of toxic or volatile substances, and often profound societal or religious opposition to challenging established doctrines. Pioneering anatomists risked contracting diseases from cadavers often illegally obtained. Alchemists faced explosions, fires, and poisoning from their experiments with unknown chemicals. And astronomers or philosophers proposing heliocentric models risked charges of heresy and persecution. reflecting a brutal reality where the pursuit of empirical knowledge often meant self-sacrifice and confrontation with powerful, unscientific authorities. Historians still widely debate the precise motivations for individuals to engage in such dangerous scientific pursuits in times when tangible rewards were minimal and risks were existential, and whether their thirst for knowledge was driven by genuine curiosity, spiritual conviction, or a desire for practical applications. Imagine yourself, then an early anatomist in Renaissance Europe, perhaps in a clandestine workshop in a city like Padua or Bologna, Italy, akin to a diligent modern surgeon from a well-equipped operating theater in, say, New York City. Your job is to understand the human body, but religious dogma often forbids the dissection of human remains. So you operate in secret, often obtaining fresh cadavers illegally, perhaps from gallows or unmarked graves. The bodies are usually unpreserved, rapidly decaying, and swarming with disease-causing microbes. You work in dim light, with crude instruments, breathing the putrid air, constantly exposed to highly contagious pathogens for which there is no cure. Remember? Chapter 2. A simple cut from your scalpel could lead to a deadly infection. The risk of contracting plague, tuberculosis, or other fatal diseases from the corpses you study is incredibly high. And if you're caught, you face severe punishment, perhaps even execution for sacrilege or grave robbing. It truly sucked to be an early anatomist. These brave or perhaps foolhardy individuals laid the groundwork for modern medicine by daring to look inside the human body. But their classrooms were often charnel houses, and their lessons came at the cost of their own health and freedom. This wasn't the controlled, sterile environment of a modern gross anatomy lab, with cadavers preserved and strict biohazard protocols in place in, say, a medical school in Los Angeles, California. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable biological peril. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about knowledge at a cost-risky scientific pursuits is the curious phenomenon of ancient Chinese alchemists experimenting with explosive black powder as an elixir of immortality. Where, ironically, some of the earliest documented experiments with gunpowder were conducted by Taoist alchemists in ancient China who were earnestly trying to discover elixirs for eternal life. Their pursuit often involved mixing sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter in heated crucibles, frequently resulting in violent explosions, fires, or accidental self-poisoning as they ingested their dangerous concoctions in the belief they were consuming divinity, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of spiritual aspiration and the deeply disturbing unintended consequences of uncontrolled experimentation. Imagine yourself mixing volatile powders in a small clay pot, hoping to live forever, and then suddenly being blown across the room, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden dangers they invited daily. It truly sucked to accidentally invent explosives while seeking immortality. Consider also the job of an alchemist in medieval Europe, perhaps in a hidden laboratory in a dark, dusty castle, akin to a diligent modern chemist from a major pharmaceutical company in, say, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Accustomed to state-of-the-art equipment and rigorous safety standards, your work involves attempting to turn base metals into gold, or to discover the elixir of life. You deal with highly corrosive acids, poisonous mercury, lead, arsenic, and other dangerous chemicals, often heating them in unstable glass or ceramic vessels over open flames. Fumes are unregulated, ventilation is poor, and explosions or fires are constant threats. Many alchemists suffered from chronic poisoning, lung damage, and disfigurement, often unknowingly. The secrecy of their craft, driven by a fear of accusations of witchcraft or fraud, meant they worked in isolation, with no one to oversee their safety or offer help if an experiment went catastrophically wrong. This profound exposure to toxic materials was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of laboratory accidents with modern personal protective equipment and safety showers in a brightly lit modern research facility in, say, suburban Houston, Texas, historians still widely debate the precise contribution of alchemical practices to the later development of modern chemistry, and whether the empirical observation and experimental methodologies employed by some alchemists, despite their mystical goals, laid crucial groundwork for later scientific advancements. Then there were the early astronomers and philosophers who dared to challenge the geocentric, Earth-centered view of the universe. Imagine figures like Galileo Galilei in 17th century Italy, or even earlier, thinkers whose ideas clashed with the powerful religious institutions of their time. Your job is to observe the heavens, make calculations, and propose theories based on your findings. But those findings directly contradict centuries of theological teaching. You face the constant threat of persecution, imprisonment, or even execution for heresy. Your data could literally cost you your life. You might be forced to recant your discoveries, publicly denying truths you know to be factual, under pain of torture. It truly sucked to prove the Earth revolved around the sun. Even those involved in early engineering projects faced extreme risks. Imagine the brilliant minds who designed and built ancient siege engines, or the early architects who pushed the boundaries of structural integrity without modern physics. Their experiments were often full-scale, risking the lives of workers as we saw in Chapter 4 and their own reputations, if not their lives. If a design failed spectacularly, the trial and error was often deadly, with no computer simulations to test theories. This wasn't the meticulous planning and extensive testing of a modern engineering project, with fail-safes and redundancy built into every system in, say, a sophisticated aerospace engineering firm in Seattle, Washington. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable, and often lethal unknowns. The jobs of early scientists and innovators were not just intellectually demanding, they were life-threatening. The constant exposure to physical dangers, the threat of societal persecution, and the sheer isolation of working at the very edge of human understanding all were terrifying harbingers of dubious discovery. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their pursuits were not just academic. They were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every inquiry, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, intellectual menace. These were the intrepid souls who, driven by curiosity and a thirst for knowledge, risked everything to understand the world around them. Their sacrifices, both physical and intellectual, laid the essential groundwork for the scientific advancements we now take for granted. They make us appreciate the profound comfort of intellectual freedom, the safety of modern laboratories, and the collaborative spirit of contemporary scientific inquiry. Knowing that when a scientist makes a groundbreaking discovery today, they are celebrated, not condemned, and their pursuit of truth does not routinely come at the cost of their life. Let's gently return from the grim reality of knowledge at a cost-risky scientific pursuits, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of alchemists blowing themselves up and anatomists risking plague. If Chapter 8 revealed the perils of intellectual pioneering, tonight we'll delve into the chilling world of those who enforced the brutal laws and carried out the ultimate punishments in ancient societies. Guardians of the grim enforcement and punishment, we're going to explore the stark, often morally ambiguous, reality of how order was maintained and justice dispensed in times without established legal frameworks. Due process, or human rights. Contemplating how individuals, from city guards to executioners, face the chilling prospect of constant danger, social ostracism, and the immense psychological burden of their roles, transforming every street into a potential scene of arbitrary violence and every courtroom into a theater of terror, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of societal order often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar enforcement a testament to their desperate desire for control and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself now, an ancient enforcer of law or a dispenser of punishment, perhaps akin to a diligent modern police officer from a well-trained force in, say, Los Angeles, California, accustomed to strict protocols, de-escalation techniques, and due process. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives of grim thought after Chapter 1, the terrifying medical practices from Chapter 2, the pervasive urban squalor from Chapter 3, the relentless physical labor from Chapter 4, the perilous journeys from Chapter 5, the dehumanizing specter of slavery from Chapter 6, the gruesome entertainment from Chapter 7, and the risky scientific pursuits from Chapter 8. And now you face the constant, immediate threats of maintaining order in a world where violence is often the first and only resort. There are no Miranda rights, no crime scene forensics, no appeals courts, no concept of rehabilitation, and certainly no public trust in law enforcement. As found in a modern justice system in, say, contemporary New York City, instead, you witness or are constantly engaged in brutal arrests, public floggings, or gruesome executions, all under the arbitrary command of a ruler or a vengeful mob. Every moment fraught with the risk of personal injury, mob violence, or the immense psychological toll of participating in state-sanctioned cruelty. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern law and order. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound assault on your understanding of justice and human dignity. Consider yourself a nervous city guard, patrolling a dark, crime-ridden alleyway, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you hear the distant screams of a public flogging, knowing that you might be called upon to inflict similar pain, your body bracing for the inevitable. Peculiar violence and profound despair of a daily existence defined by brutal, relentless enforcement and profound despair, or perhaps a concerned criminologist, studying historical accounts of ancient legal codes and, say, ancient Babylonian texts, recognizing the detached efficiency with which harsh punishments were prescribed for minor offenses, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient justice. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of police misconduct with modern oversight boards and community policing initiatives, in a brightly lit modern precinct in, say, suburban Chicago, Illinois, the hushed whispers of accusation, once a gentle murmur of complaint, now mingle with the chilling sounds of cracking whips and desperate pleas. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal injury. Thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate order often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on physical suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling reality of guardians of the grim enforcement and punishment, where the very essence of ancient justice was not about profound societal rehabilitation or individual rights, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming a daily patrol into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting order often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar enforcement a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of law enforcement today, you might picture police officers responding to emergencies, detectives solving crimes, and courts administering justice. But in the ancient world, the roles of maintaining order and meting out punishment were often terrifying, brutal, and profoundly arbitrary. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of terrible jobs that don't exist anymore and more, focusing on the pervasive dread of guardians of the grim enforcement and punishment. A common historical truth is that ancient law enforcement and judicial systems were characterized by extreme brutality, lack of due process, and often public ritualized forms of punishment, with roles such as prison guards, torturers, and executioners holding significant, albeit often reviled, positions. These jobs involved direct participation in inflicting physical pain, psychological torment, and death, often under arbitrary command and with no legal protections for the accused, reflecting a brutal reality where justice was swift and often merciless. And those who enforced it faced constant exposure to violence, social ostracism, and the immense psychological burden of their actions. Historians still widely debate the precise psychological impact of such roles on individuals in ancient societies, and whether the pervasive exposure to violence and suffering led to widespread desensitization or chronic psychological distress among those performing these grim duties. Imagine yourself, then, a Roman prison guard, perhaps in the infamous Mamertine prison beneath the Roman Forum, akin to a diligent modern correctional officer from a maximum security facility in, say, San Quentin, California, accustomed to strict protocols and human rights guidelines. Your job is to keep prisoners, often political enemies, condemned criminals, or captured enemies of the state, in dark, damp, often subterranean cells. There are no concepts of rehabilitation, exercise yards, or even basic sanitation. Remember Chapter 3. You are responsible for ensuring they do not escape, often through starvation, neglect, or physical intimidation. You witness the slow decay of individuals, their mental and physical health deteriorating. You might be ordered to inflict summary beatings or to deny food and water. The air is thick with the stench of human waste, fear, and desperation. Your life is also precarious, and escape could mean your own death. It truly sucked to be a Roman prison guard. These prisons were often more like holding cells for execution or torture than places of long-term incarceration. The guard's role was not to rehabilitate, but to break the spirit and body, ensuring compliance or preparing the prisoner for their ultimate fate. This wasn't the regulated, albeit challenging, environment of a modern correctional facility. With a focus on reform and established protocols for use of force in, say, a brightly lit, modern facility in Florence, Colorado, this was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter inescapable dehumanization. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about guardians of the grim enforcement and punishment is the curious phenomenon of ancient Chinese body collectors enforcing sumptuary laws by mutilation, where, in certain periods of imperial China, specialized groups or officials had the grim job of enforcing sumptuary laws which dictated what clothing, materials, or ornaments people of different social classes could wear. If commoners were found wearing forbidden silks or jewelry, these enforcers would not just confiscate the items, but might publicly mutilate the offenders, perhaps cutting off their hands or feet, to mark them for life and serve as a terrifying public deterrent, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of social control and the deeply disturbing willingness to inflict permanent physical harm for perceived violations of class hierarchy. Imagine yourself watching a person's hand being severed for wearing forbidden silk, knowing you might be next if you stepped out of line. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden brutality they experienced daily. It truly sucked to enforce fashion. Consider also the job of a torturer in ancient or medieval societies, perhaps in a hidden dungeon of a European castle, akin to a diligent modern interrogator from a specialized intelligence agency in, say, Langley, Virginia? Accustomed to strict ethical guidelines and psychological techniques, your work involves extracting confessions or information, or simply inflicting pain as punishment, using a terrifying array of instruments racks, thumbscrews, hot irons, water torture, and more. You are directly responsible for causing excruciating, prolonged agony, often without any legal checks or balances. The screams of your victims, the smell of burnt flesh, the sight of broken bodies. These are your daily reality. You are often feared and reviled by the public, even as you perform a state-sanctioned role. The psychological toll of inflicting such suffering must have been immense, even if you rationalized it as justice. Ahahya, this profound engagement with human suffering was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of ethical dilemmas with modern legal precedents and human rights charters in a brightly lit modern law school in, say, suburban Washington, D.C. Historians still widely debate the true effectiveness of torture as a reliable means of extracting truthful information in ancient and medieval judicial systems, and whether its widespread use was primarily for coercion and punishment rather than genuine investigative purposes. Then there was the executioner. This job is perhaps the most universally grim, whether by beheading, crucifixion, hanging, stoning, or some other horrific method. The executioner was the final arbiter of life, performing the ultimate punishment in public spectacle. Imagine the sheer strength and precision required to cleanly behead someone with an axe, or the long, agonizing process of nailing someone to a cross. You are the embodiment of state power, feared by all and yet often marginalized. Your hands are literally stained with the blood of others. You are privy to the final moments of countless lives, witnessing their terror, their pain, their desperation. The public might cheer, but you are the one who has to go home with the images of what you've done. It truly sucked to be an executioner. Even less official roles, like the vigilante mob leader in a lawless frontier or a chaotic city, carried immense risk and psychological burden. You might be the one called upon to mete out justice when formal systems fail, leading angry crowds to lynch or punish perceived criminals. While perhaps initially driven by a sense of righteousness, the descent into arbitrary violence and mob rule could be swift and brutal, putting your own life at risk from retaliation and forcing you to commit acts you might later regret. This wasn't the controlled deployment of a modern SWAT team, with clear chain of command and rules of engagement in, say, a structured urban environment in Miami, Florida. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable moral compromise. The jobs of those involved in ancient enforcement and punishment were not just physically dangerous, they were morally corrupting and psychologically devastating. The constant exposure to violence, the infliction of pain, the absence of mercy, and the profound dehumanization of both perpetrator and victim, all were terrifying harbingers of dubious order. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their roles were not just official duties. They were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every command, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen yet deeply felt societal menace. These were the individuals who held the brutal line, ensuring that the rules, however harsh, were enforced. Their chilling realities remind us of the immense progress humanity has made in developing more humane and just legal systems, with concepts like rule of law, due process, rehabilitation, and the rejection of cruel and unusual punishment. It makes us appreciate the profound comfort of knowing that if you ever face the justice system today, you have rights, protections, and a chance for a fair trial. A stark contrast to the terrifying, arbitrary brutality that defined the lives of those who were the guardians of the grim. Let's gently return from the grim reality of guardians of the grim enforcement and punishment. Where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of torturers and public executions. If Chapter 9 exposed the brutal realities of ancient justice, tonight we'll bring our long, unsettling historical journey to a reflective close. We'll connect the profound suffering and terrifying realities of their brutal lives to a modern appreciation for the astonishing comfort, safety, and ethical clarity we now possess regarding leadership and governance. Whispers of Progress. Our modern comforts. We're going to explore the stark, often humbling, reality of how far we've come in terms of human rights, ethical leadership, and the very concept of societal well-being, contemplating how the extreme efforts and profound despair endured by those who faced terrible ancient jobs underscore the immense value of the peace and dignity we often take for granted with every democratic institution, transforming their tragic struggles into a poignant reminder that even the most brutal chapters of human history can eventually yield to the quiet triumph of scientific understanding and societal evolution, and revealing a chilling truth that the ultimate lesson from the disturbing lives of ancient laborers and enforcers might just be the universal human need for dignity, for justice, and for the profound, unshakable right to live a life unburdened by preventable terror, making every moment of modern legal process a testament to our collective progress, and every protected right a silent triumph over the archaic, terrifying shadows of the past. Imagine yourself now, a modern individual, perhaps sitting in a comfortable armchair in your living room in, say, suburban Austin, Texas. The soft glow of a reading lamp illuminating a book on ethical leadership or international relations. You are safe, secure, and preparing for the deep, restorative satisfaction of living in a society that, however imperfectly, strives for human rights, democratic principles, and peaceful coexistence rather than raw power and unchecked ambition. This is not the exhausted collapse of someone who has just barely survived a plague, nor the constant internal battle with the fear of being arbitrarily tortured. This is profound peace, a luxury purchased by centuries of philosophical debate, legal reform, public advocacy, and the slow, arduous process of building societies founded on human rights and due process, a luxury denied to countless individuals for generations. Consider yourself a contemplative individual, reflecting on the vast chasm between the agonizing, perilous experience of ancient brutality and the almost effortless comfort you now experience during a routine evening. Recognizing that their suffering inadvertently paved the way for the very tranquility and security you now possess. Illustrating the profound historical journey from brutal primitivism to genuine, compassionate understanding of labor, law, and human dignity, or perhaps a dreaming mind, wandering through the vast landscapes of human history? Understanding that the ancient, obsessive pursuit of survival, however misguided its early methods, was a necessary, if terrifying, step on humanity's long path toward genuine understanding of both human psychology and societal governance, which now allows for the quiet contemplation and secure legal protections that were once impossible. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply analyzing a historical timeline of labor laws in a quiet, abstract academic setting in, say, pristine university library in Washington, D.C. The gentle whispers of your own satisfied sigh, that was once a simple biological function, now seem imbued with a subtle, profound resonance of historical struggle and enduring human ingenuity. Thick with the silent echoes of those whose lives were defined by constant external and internal battles against an incomprehensible, often merciless world. This is the pervasive, often profoundly humbling reality of whispers of progress. Our modern comforts, where the extreme fear and brutal realities of ancient jobs provide a powerful backdrop for appreciating the quiet, often unacknowledged, comforts of modern life, transforming every protected right into a silent celebration of human progress, and revealing a chilling truth that the ultimate symbols of modern comfort and personal well-being are often directly tied to the unacknowledged, agonizing struggle to escape the very chaos and terror that defined ancient, violent belief systems. We've journeyed through the disturbing world of ancient, terrible jobs. From the grim reality of the dawn of discomfort, Chapter 1, and the dehumanizing unseen horrors, Chapter 2, through the pervasive brutality of filth and fury, Chapter 3, and the lasting shame of the body as tool. Chapter 4, we recoiled from perilous pathways. Chapter 5, shuddered at human commodities. Chapter 6, grimaced at the stage of suffering. Chapter 7, and felt the agony of knowledge at a cost. Chapter 8, culminating in the complex impact of Guardians of the Grimm Chapter 9. We've seen the sheer scale of their suffering, a testament to a time when basic understanding of human rights, due process, and ethical labor practices was non-existent, and every aspect of existence was fraught with arbitrary danger. Now, as our long journey concludes, let's take a moment to reflect on these extreme realities and what their brutal, desperate existence can tell us about ourselves, about the nature of human progress, and about the profound importance of the very things we seek tonight. Peace and rest, often found in the security of a just society. This final chapter, Whispers of Progress. Our modern comforts brings us full circle from the ultimate expression of human judicial struggle to the fundamental human need for comfort and recuperation. A common historical truth is that modern societal advancements have largely eliminated or drastically reformed the terrible jobs of antiquity. Driven by the rise of technology automating dangerous physical labor, evolving ethical frameworks abolishing slavery, establishing human rights, improved scientific understanding transforming medicine, public health, and engineering, and the development of democratic governance and labor protections. Key developments include universal human rights declarations, labor unions, widespread access to education, advanced medical science, and comprehensive safety regulations. Reflecting a profound societal shift from valuing raw power and brute force to prioritizing individual dignity, well-being, and collective prosperity. Though challenges persist in achieving these ideals universally, historians still widely debate the precise causal links between technological innovation, moral enlightenment, and the decline of these brutal practices, and whether the primary drivers were economic efficiency, philosophical shifts, or the increasing power of organized movements advocating for human dignity. Imagine yourself then, a modern citizen, perhaps living in a society where if you disagree with your employer, you have the right to form a union, to negotiate for better conditions, and to express your concerns freely without fear of summary execution or arbitrary dismissal, where workplaces are ideally accountable to safety regulations, bound by labor laws, and expected to provide a safe and dignified environment for all, not just for the enrichment of a few. When you hear about work, you think of career paths, professional development, and fair compensation, not mass starvation, enslavement, or the building of human-powered treadmills. You're greeted by transparent labor practices, perhaps participate in civic debates about social justice, and are largely confident in the fairness and predictability of your legal and economic systems. The air smells of productivity and carefully documented policies, not blood and fear. The sounds are the measured discussions of colleagues, not the screams of the tortured or the cries of the dispossessed. This boundless comfort, this inherent sense of safety and understanding of the rules that govern work processes, is something we often take for granted. But for those enduring the terrible jobs of antiquity, these were unimaginable luxuries. They lived lives where almost every aspect of interaction with their work was dictated by fear, uncertainty, and the constant threat of the unknown, a perpetual state of being acted upon rather than acting. Their lives were constrained by the perceived dangers of the physical world, their minds haunted by terrifying stories, and their futures were dictated by the terrifying limitations of primitive understanding and brutal power dynamics. It truly sucked to live in such a world. The experiences of those in the ancient shadows, in their extreme fear and vulnerability regarding labor, force us to confront the very definition of a life free from preventable suffering and terrifying oppression. They were often strong, resilient individuals, admired for their endurance. Yet, as we've seen throughout our journey, these external markers of fortitude often masked profound internal suffering. The very things that make a job system bearable safety, human rights, and a sense of dignity were systematically denied to them. Their desperate attempts to survive the brutal arena of early labor, as explored with the dawn of discomfort in Chapter 1, their reliance on sheer physical endurance against terror. Remember the challenges in the body as tool from Chapter 4. Their vulnerability to the unseen internal threats of disease and arbitrary violence, as seen with Unseen Horrors and Guardians of the Grim in chapters 2 and 9, all became constant, mocking reminders of the emptiness within their limited understanding of the world. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about Whispers of Progress. Our modern comforts is the curious phenomenon of modern extreme challenge events that inadvertently mimic ancient labor. Where, in contemporary society, activities like ultra-marathons across deserts, endurance strongman competitions that involve lifting massive weights, or even certain survival reality TV shows, sometimes consciously or unconsciously recreate aspects of the physical and mental hardships faced in ancient terrible jobs. Participants voluntarily subject themselves to conditions of extreme discomfort, exhaustion, and risk, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of human desire for challenge and the deeply unsettling echo of a past where such suffering was not a choice, but a brutal daily reality. Offering a peculiar form of safe historical tourism for the modern psyche, imagine yourself pushing your body to its absolute limit for a medal, knowing that for someone else, that was just Tuesday. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden efforts we make to appreciate what we have. It truly sucked to live that reality without a choice. The journey from the brutal world of ancient, terrible jobs to the relatively humane and ethically guided labor landscapes of today is a testament to humanity's enduring drive to alleviate suffering and advance well-being. It highlights that true progress is not just measured in grand inventions, but in the painstaking philosophical shifts, legal reforms, public advocacy, and humanitarian advancements that allow us to live with greater comfort, safety, and dignity. Their struggle, their quiet despair over simply existing safely under a brutal job, serves as a powerful historical mirror, reflecting back to us the immense value of the liberties and comforts we now enjoy. Their lives, lived under constant threat of arbitrary violence and pervasive physical injustice, underscore the importance of scientific understanding, human rights advocacy, and a compassionate approach to societal well-being. Historians and political scientists still widely debate the long-term societal impact of ingrained historical experiences with brutal labor practices on contemporary public attitudes towards work ethic, social safety nets, and the exercise of economic power, and whether the echoes of such deeply ingrained experiences still subtly influence modern debates about labor exploitation or the public appetite for toughness narratives in societies that emerged from similar historical contexts. The people who performed these terrible ancient jobs were trapped in a system that promised survival, but often delivered profound, prolonged suffering. Their existence was a perpetual battle for comfort and understanding under the crushing weight of their roles, ultimately ending with their bodies marked by hardship. Their lives often diminished by chronic fear and internal torment. They were living, breathing examples of how a lack of established scientific knowledge, coupled with a rudimentary worldview, could utterly dehumanize the simple act of living and working. So, as we finally conclude our journey into the disturbing lives of those who performed terrible jobs that no longer exist, their ambitions, their challenges, their quiet suffering, let their extreme experiences serve as a poignant backdrop against which to truly appreciate your own moment of peace. The comfort of your modern home, the security of your rights, the profound simplicity of closing your eyes and drifting into sleep after a day lived with dignity and without the constant fear of arbitrary violence or unchecked power. These are not small things. They are the hard-won victories of human progress, the culmination of centuries of philosophical inquiry, legal development, and a slow, painful shedding of primal fears. A journey in which even the most brutal historical realities inadvertently revealed the universal human longing for comfort and a life free from agonizing terror. Every protected right you possess, every fair labor practice you benefit from, every moment of stillness after a day lived free from arbitrary violence is a profound farewell to the constant vigilance, the aching body, the scarred spirit, and the restless, fractured mind of those who struggled with the brutal lives associated with terrible ancient jobs. Their legacy isn't just in the historical records they left behind, it's in the quiet appreciation we gain for the calm and freedom that they so rarely knew. Their relentless endurance, however tragic, laid some of the earliest stones on the path that eventually led to a world where individuals can truly define their own worth, pursue their own lives, and find a gentle, undisturbed sleep, knowing their future is their own and their understanding of justice and well-being is ever growing.